Hello, everyone. Welcome to JFL Network. I am analyst Jim Bob Claker, and today we're going to be going over the power rankings of the JFL. We're halfway through the season, just finished week 4, some thrilling matchups, and we'll see how these teams stack up against each other. So, let's get right into it. JFL theme music. James, get on that. You play trumpet. Okay. At number 10, no surprise, they're 0-4. The Covington Salamanders are at number 10 here. So they're 0-4. They've lost 4 in a row. They cannot have a winning record even if they win out. They just lost 49-42 to the Kingfishers. So it's a promising game. They put up 42 points. They had the first overall pick, Jack Malley, and he's been great. He's second in pass yards with 1476, but he's third in interceptions thrown with 7, and he also leads the league in times sacked with 11. So, he doesn't have a lot of help. Running back Joey McLean is pretty average. He's 6th in rushing yards with 235. Tight end Henry Rodriguez leads the team in receiving. He's been fantastic. He has 403 yards. Malik Crowar is pretty solid. He has 380 yards. But other than that, there's really no help for Jack Malley. The defense is terrible. Linebacker DeAndre Tulloch is pretty good. He's number 2 in tackles with 47. And defensive back Marvin Smith is pretty good. He has 4 interceptions, tied to lead the league. There's a bunch of players with 4 interceptions. But there's nothing else on this team. And bottom line is they're winless. Can't put them any higher than number 4 or number 10 with 4 losses. Number 9, we've got the Leopards. The only team with 1 win and nothing else, 1-3. They just lost 14-7 to the Glaciers. Their offense is very, very high powered, but there's 0 run game whatsoever. Ruth Legane, quarterback, is 3rd in passing yards, 1,259. Running back Calvin Zenner literally only has 88 yards. They have 0 run game whatsoever, so they have to rely on their excellent passing game. But they have 3 excellent wide receivers to do that with. They have Ricky Toon, who has 523 yards, 2nd in the league, most by a wide receiver. Travion Meissen has 361 yards. He's 12th in the league. And Soren Kelsey, who has 353 yards, and he's 13th. So it's a pretty dang good wide receiver room. Best in the league, without a doubt. The defense is very underwhelming, though. Linebacker Ruiz Levi is 5th in tackles. He's got 44. He's got 3 sacks and 2 forced fumbles, so he's pretty good. And Chandler Bevel is 7th in tackles with 37, and linebacker Leo Punnett is 10th in tackles with 34. So they've got 3 pretty decent linebackers, but that's pretty much all they got. The defensive back Carlton Locke's pretty good, but he's got no stats to back it up. And the offense's passing game has to do literally everything for this team. And they got 3 losses, so they're number 9 on this power ranking. Number 8, we have the Rallis Rhinos. They are 2-2, just like most of the league. They just lost 14-21 to the Sharks in a very close game that came down to the final play, where Tiber Jericho scrambled for a game-winning touchdown. Quarterback Phil Browning sucks. He's rotten. I hate to say it, but he is the worst quarterback starting in the league. He was drafted in the 14th round, so it's kind of what you expect. They relied on the run game, but the run game has been pretty lackluster. Raquise Davies has been extremely underwhelming. There's really no bright spots on this offense. Their number 1 receiver is 19th overall in receiving yards, which is undrafted free agent wide receiver Cam George Cone. The defense is solid, though. D lineman, first-round pick Demario Rashevon has 4 sacks. He had 2 in his last game. Linebacker George Ayers has 2 sacks, or has a sack and 3 forced fumbles. And defensive back Ross Blunt has 4 interceptions, tied for leading the league, and a forced fumble. And they have other intimidating hard hitters. The defensive back Brutus Beckham, for example, has a couple forced fumbles. But the D just isn't good enough with that rotten of an offense. So the Rhinos will take the number 8 spot on this power ranking. All right. Number 7, we have the New Ushup Glaciers. They're also 2-2. They just won 14-7 over the Leopards in a close game, defensive game. Their first-round pick, Danny Cruzan, who was 5th overall, running back 1 in the draft, already got traded just recently after week 4. He's been extremely underwhelming all season. I don't think he's had more than 40 yards in a game. And they decided to pull the plug on him already, their first round pick. They traded him to the Paladins in exchange for Quincy Jerome and a 3rd round pick. So they don't have Danny Crutchin anymore. They have Quincy Jerome, who was running back 3 on the Paladins, who have 3 pretty decent running backs. Their number 1 receiver is Marty DeBerry, who has 364 yards, pretty good, but nothing else on offense. Quarterback Hansbach Aken was an experimental draft pick, and it really hasn't worked out. He's been probably the 2nd worst starting quarterback next to Phil Browning. The defense, though, is excellent. It's a stifling defense. The best linebacker room in the league. Ivan Dekolov is 3rd in tackles and 1st in forced fumbles. Arden Babylon is 6th in tackles and 2nd in forced fumbles. Not to mention their 3rd linebacker, Kwame Erica, who had 20 tackles in a game. Pretty good. King Salazar, DB, has 4 interceptions. Pretty excellent. Ryan Craig has 4 sacks. The D is very dominant, but it needs improvement from the switch to Danny Crutchin to Quincy Jerome. If Quincy Jerome can do any better, this team will be a lot better off. At number 6, we have the Griffins. The Griffins are also 2-2. They just lost 49-21 to the Paladins. They started off 2-0, and now they're 0-2 over the last 2 games, 2 losses in a row. Quarterback Isaac Kowalski is a 5th in passing yards with 1,091. So, average. Tanner Beauplan is 4th in rush yards with 262. Pretty decent. Tanner Beauplan is one of the better running backs in the league, for sure. Hunter Sallow, tight end 1 in the draft, has 411 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns leads the league. Pretty excellent. The offense has its stars, but it just isn't complete. And the defense is mediocre. Linebacker Tyrese Coffin is 8th in the league with tackles with 37, and he has 4 forced fumbles. Xavier Allenberg has 3 interceptions. He's pretty good. Multiple players with 1 or 2 sacks, but they just gave up 49 points. That's not good. Griffins are a pretty average team. They got stars, but they're not complete. Now, number 5, another pretty average team, is the Faltroit Corsairs. They are 2-2 as well. They just lost 35-21 to the Lancers in prime time. Jerry Hull's quarterback is mediocre. He's got 978 pass yards, which is 7th, and he leads the league in interceptions thrown with 9. But running back Izzy Danzler is second in rushing yards. He has 295, which is pretty impressive. But it is a pretty lackluster year for running backs. There's really no stars besides Ernie Gecko. Andre Vermeil, wide receiver, is 3rd in receiving yards with 474 and has 5 touchdowns. And I believe is near the top in receptions. But the defense is mediocre. Linebackers Ray Graham, Bron Carmichael, and Rydon Jameson all have over 30 tackles, which is pretty nice. They have 3 different players with some interceptions, 1 or 2. Ray Graham has 4 forced fumbles, but they have the worst D-line in the league. There's 0 sacks among all the D-linemen. Their only sacks on the team come from their linebackers, which is only a couple. Really an average team, but they're 2-2, and I believe that they can get together with that high-powered offensive weapons. Number 4 on this power ranking, we have the Kingfishers, the Cassaddle Kingfishers. They are 2-2. They just won 49-42 over the Salamanders in a crazy game. Their 2nd overall pick, quarterback Ike Michaels, is 6th in passing yards. He has 1,091. He's 2nd in interceptions thrown with 8. Running back Taco Palamam is 3rd in rushing yards. He has 290. Wide receiver Ilano Mila just set the record for receiving yards in a game with 275 and also had 3 touchdowns. He has 429 on the season, which is 5th overall. Pretty good. Michael Slazio has 321 yards, wide receiver. The defense is pretty solid. They have the best pass rush tandem in the league with William Tevin, who has 7 sacks, which is 1st, and Jalen Tyrell, who has 6 sacks, which is 3rd in the league. Defensive back Quinn Swalla has 3 interceptions, but there's no one on the team with 30 tackles, and the linebackers are really bad. So it's an average team, but in the upper end of the average. Number 3, we're at the top 3. We got the Sharks, the Shreveport Sharks. They're also 2-2, but they're on 2 wins in a row. They just won a close 21-14 game over the Rhinos. They have the clear runaway MVP favorite. Without a doubt, quarterback Tiber Jericho is the MVP favorite. He's not thrown for less than 400 passing yards in a single game. There's only been 2 other 400 passing performances by anybody else, and they were this week. He has 1,869 passing yards to be first, and 11 touchdowns, which is also first. But the running game is terrible. Third-round pick Cal Montgomery has only 63 rushing yards on the season. But lucky for them, their undrafted free agent running back Chase Wilson has 228 to be the RB1 for the team. Tight end Hank Lewison's a star. He has 448 yards, 4th in the league. Undrafted free agent wide receiver Travis Amora has been excellent. He has 417 yards, which is 6th. Wide receiver Mason Mountain has been good, 392 yards, 9th in the league. And Jalen Rorick has 303 yards. So all around a pretty good offense, largely carried by Tiber Jericho being the best player in the league, but still there. But the defense is pretty eh. The D-line is awful. The only team worse at D-line is probably the Corsairs. They have one good linebacker, Aaron St. Barrio, who is 9th in tackles with 37. But they have a great DB room. Justin Salas has 4 picks, and Jay Bolton and Amani Thatcher. It's a pretty good lockdown DB secondary. But yeah, Tiber Jericho alone, playing at such a elite level, elevates this team to 3rd place on the power rankings. Top two on this list, we've got the Paladins, the Earville Paladins. They're 3-1. They've won 3 in a row after losing week 1 to the Rhinos. They've gotten it together. They just won 49-21 over the Griffins. They have back-to-back games with 40-plus points put up. And it's pretty impressive. They've got their offense clicking. Randall Corlin, their quarterback, is elite. He's the best scrambler in the league. He's 4th in passing yards with 1,104. He's 5th in the league in rushing yards with 250. He just had a game with 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and a 71-yard touchdown reception for 5 total touchdowns in a game. 1 offensive player of the week. That's incredible. Tight end Dustin Dodrum leads the entire league in receiving yards with 536. That's impressive. Their running back room is what's really interesting. So they had originally Quincy Jerome and Rick Smothers, but both were pretty lackluster, pretty mediocre. So the Paladins signed quarterback Kerman Paulson from undrafted free agency and converted him to running back, and he's been their best running back since. He had 100 rushing yards in this last game and has really opened up their offense, as well as being able to throw a trick play. He threw a touchdown to Randall Corlin. So Kerman Paulson, then they have Rick Smothers, who's a good power back. Then they traded Quincy Jerome for Danny Crudgeon from the Glaciers. So now Danny Crudgeon's in this running back room. So that's pretty impressive. And the offense is really tricky. They have the scrambling quarterback, all the running backs, and their receivers get incorporated in the run game a lot. Cam Crutter and Devin Pacer both run the ball. Pretty dynamic offense. Otto Wallace on defense is their best defender, 4th in tackles with 46. He has 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. All-pro player right there. Charles Millward has 4 picks, which he got all in 1 game for a record. Derek Macon has 3 sacks. Pretty decent defense all around and just a stellar offense. And for the number 1 team in the JFL, you all knew it was coming. They're 4-0. Best team around right now. Team to beat. The Lancers. The D.O.Town Lancers are 4-0. That's undeniable. They're just undeniably the best team right now. They just won 35-21 over the Corsairs in primetime. They've already had 2 primetime games because they're that must-see TV. Team is good top to bottom. The only thing they really could work on, the only thing that's really lackluster is the wide receiver core kind of sucks. But when you have the best running game in the league with Ernie Gecko, you don't really need great receivers. Ernie Gecko is the only superstar running back in the league. He's rushed for over 100 in every single game. He has 503 yards and 9 touchdowns, both to lead the league. Quarterback Cruz Gibbs has 963 yards, which is 8th in passing, but he also has 200 rush yards, which is 8th in rushing. Undrafted free agent wide receiver Denzel Mason leads the team with 342 yards. Tight end DeMarcon Conker has been pretty stellar. He's got 253 yards and had his big touchdown moments. Second-round pick John Badunce. The reason why the wide receiver core is so lackluster, because second-round pick was a receiver, John Badunce, but he's only getting 1 catch a game, playing terribly, one of the worst receivers in the league. On defense, they're excellent. They've got the number 1 tackler in the league, linebacker Jeremiah Conalock, who had 26 tackles in a game, which is a record. He has 62 total, and he also has 3 forced fumbles. They have the number one leader in sacks, tied with William Tevin. They have Tucker Borston with 7 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. Asher Saylor also has 3 sacks on the D line. And they have 2 DBs with 2+ picks, Morty Fay and Xavier Evans. Pretty good team all around, undefeated, and definitely the team to beat. So that is our power rankings. Thank you for tuning in to JFL Network. I am Jim Bob Claker, and stay tuned for the rest of the season.